I wonder, could we be in a world in which Trump wins Iowa, Nikki Haley wins New Hampshire, and then what?
Yeah, look, I think it's within the realm of possibility that Haley could win New Hampshire. Even in years where you've had a fairly, clear Republican nominee, Iowa and New Hampshire often split. Mitt Romney came very close to winning Iowa and then won New Hampshire. Trump himself lost Iowa and then won New Hampshire in 2016. In terms of like an actual competitive race, you have to go back to 1976 with Gerald Ford to find a Republican winning both Iowa and New Hampshire, although the Iowa caucus at that time was in sort of a proto format. It was basically a straw poll of sample precincts across the state. It wasn't the kind of event we see today. And New Hampshire does have a way of kind of pumping the brakes on this process. But the flip side of it is that if Trump wins New Hampshire, I think he's in great shape, I think, regardless of what happens in New Hampshire, but he's really in great shape if he can win both Iowa and New Hampshire.
So if he bags the first two, it's kind of over, I'm sensing from you. Vivek Ramaswamy is out. You can maybe move those votes into Donald Trump's column. Be curious to see the impact there. But I've got to admit, I'm kind of chuckling at what we're hearing from both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, Kyle. We heard the speeches last night. Ron DeSantis says he got his ticket punched in Iowa. They were playing AC/DC and dancing around last night like they won the thing. He was a distant second. In third place, Nikki Haley says this is now a two-person race, and she's not talking about Ron DeSantis. Do they both need a reality check?
I think particularly for DeSantis, he's in trouble. Although, I think it's possible that if he had finished, several points behind Nikki Haley, that he may have dropped out. And I guess you could say, well, maybe that would have helped Haley. Although I think some of his support would have gone to Trump too. And look, I think there's been this sort of deceptive feeling about this race, in part because Trump skipped the debates, and so the most recent debate, it was just Haley and DeSantis, and if you weren't really following it, you tuned in, you say, oh, here's the two front runners for president on the Republican side, but actually you've got basically just one front runner, and he sort of showed it in Iowa by finishing basically 30 points ahead of his nearest competition. I guess you could say, hey, maybe he could have done better, but he did basically what the poll suggested. The final poll averages for 538 Rookler Politics had Trump at like 52.5. He got 51. I mean, that seems pretty much on the nose as far as I can tell. And Haley had a little bit of late momentum in polls, but DeSantis ended up finishing ahead of her. So again, I think you could spin it any way you want, but this is not a Donald Trump race versus 50%. It's a Donald Trump race versus all the other candidates, and he finished well ahead. And particularly as you get later in the process, you get a lot of winner take all or winner take most contests for delegates, and Trump could be winning way more than his share of delegates, even if his vote share does fall significantly below 50 in some of these contests.
Kyle, we saw it again. Donald Trump winning despite being outspent by his rivals and despite not even visiting the state very many times. The captain of earned media, of free media. This is something that we've never really seen before, at least to this extent. Will it continue to work, or is the Trump campaign going to have to start investing more?
Look, I think it all depends on whether Haley not only wins New Hampshire, but frankly wins South Carolina too. I really think that in order for this to turn into like an actual competitive horse race in which there's in which the door is really cracked open for one of these other candidates, Trump doesn't, losing New Hampshire isn't enough, I don't think. I think Trump needs to lose New Hampshire and maybe South Carolina too, heading into Super Tuesday, to really give, his leading rivals, particularly Nikki Haley, a shot. So, it was also, we have these polls, the race is going on for months and months, but you don't have any actual voting until Iowa. And so Iowa does have to sort of confirm what the polls have been telling us. And I think Iowa did a pretty good job of doing that, in that Trump looked like a big front runner and he performed like a big front runner in Iowa.
What did low turnout mean in the race last night? There were a lot of narratives going into this that it might benefit Ron DeSantis, who had a strong ground game. Or it might help Donald Trump because his supporters were more passionate. We saw something come in 110,000 as opposed to the high of more than 180,000 last night. This is a story of passion. Kyle, how do you see it?
There was some polling that indicated that maybe Haley might have benefited, that turnout had been higher. The final poll from the respected Iowa pollster Ann Selzer was talking about how
Yes, right.
Haley was in second place, but her support was not particularly enthusiastic, and so maybe if turnout had been higher, Haley might have done a little bit better. Although, again, we're talking about basically a 30-point gap between her and Trump. I guess maybe she could have finished ahead of DeSantis, given the difference was only a couple of points between the two of them. It is. I do think it's a little interesting that Trump, I think, has been this sort of galvanizing force on the Republican side, but when we haven't necessarily seen great Republican turnout lately, and even like in the 2022 midterms, some of the states it was a good Republican turnout on paper, but not necessarily good performance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily equate a primary and a caucus with a general election or anything like that, but it is just something to kind of pay attention to throughout the primary season. What the turnout looks like. Now, it may also just be that because Trump is like a quasi-incumbent, there just might not be as much interest because people may just think that Trump is going to win anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm having trouble with the path here for anybody not named Donald Trump at this point, Kyle. Even if Nikki Haley blows it out in New Hampshire, wins the state, she also has to win her own state, and it doesn't look like she can. Could this just be a one-hit wonder?
Yeah, the New Hampshire electorate is much more suited for Haley's coalition. More moderate, less religious Republicans. A lot of independents will probably cross over and participate in the New Hampshire caucus. That can happen in other states, but there's not the kind of tradition of it happening like there is in New Hampshire. And this is why I say winning New Hampshire is not enough for Haley. I mean, again, it's sort of, I'm sure if she does it, it'd be a great headline. But there's a month between New Hampshire and South Carolina. You've also got Nevada in the middle of that, which is a very convoluted process in which the contest that actually awards delegates to caucus, Haley's not even on the ballot there. DeSantis is, and so is Trump. Haley is running in a state-run primary that's not going to award any delegates. Doesn't really mean anything. So you've got this whole month between New Hampshire and South Carolina. Maybe if Haley wins New Hampshire, that sets her up to do better in South Carolina, which is much more like Iowa. More
That's
religious, more conservative state. Not necessarily suited for what Haley's coalition looks like.